All right, here we go. We are going to give a minute for registrants to join with us today. Oh, I see we've got half a dozen that have already jumped on already, so welcome those.
So exciting.
We'll give us, I know, give us another few seconds here, and then we'll jump right in. David, how's the weather up there in Kentucky?
It was very nice this morning. I got out. Now it's raining, so I don't know if that's a new pattern, but it seems like every other day it rains. Weather it gets down to 40 and it gets up to 90, so we get it all seasons right now going on.
All in one month.
Yeah.
All seasons in a couple days. I love it.
Exactly.
Great for the allergies.
That's for sure. Yeah, it doesn't help with health or allergies, and yeah, it's sprinkling a little bit, and I think it's around 70 here, just way overcast down in and around Nashville. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. All right, well let's jump in. We're right at the top of the hour, so welcome everyone to our weekly edition now of our coaches call, where the three of us will be taking any questions that you guys have about your business or just what's kind of going on out there in the world. Anything from finance to HR and people and everywhere in between. We're going to start off with a quick round of introductions, and then we'll jump right in and take whatever questions you have. Just a couple logistics before introductions. We are streaming live on Facebook, so hello to the Facebook audience out there. We have a member of our team monitoring the chat in Facebook, so if any questions that come up, she'll send them our way. For those of you that are connected through Zoom, please make sure you're using the Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom window for those questions that you have that we can answer for you. So my name's Ryan Markell. I'm a certified Petra coach, and I am based in Franklin, a small suburb just south of Nashville. David, you want to give a quick intro on yourself and where you're calling in from?
Yeah, David Pierce, reside in Louisville, Kentucky, not far from Nashville. Been coaching with Petra for about 4 years now, and I have a very varied entrepreneurial background that we may get into depending on what questions come up with. But good to be here today. Taylor?
And I'm Taylor Brown. I am the accountability coach on the call, so I get to work with these fine gentlemen along with all of our other coaches in the Petra world. I am down the street from Ryan right now. I just waited at his house at the Petra office, but based, quote unquote, live in the Nashville area.
That's great.
Yeah.
So we had a question come in as we polled our audience beforehand, asking about just what have we been doing? What have people doing to kind of what is their, I've heard new normal because we're far from whatever the new normal is. But what have we been doing from a personal and a professional standpoint? What's one or two unique new things that we've been doing as a result of the last several weeks of this pandemic? David, you want to share one or two things that you've been doing, personal or professional?
Yeah, a little of both. I took the initiative. I've always been into learning, but with all these big blocks of time, not spent commuting or traveling to see our members, I've dedicated that time to professional development. So I've actually been through 2 courses of some things that I wanted to always do, and I was able to complete those. I've also upped my health game a little bit, more regular routine exercise, maybe eating a little better, but been a little more focused on the health side of things. So I think this undistracted time has let me do all those things that are always on the list you never get to. So that I've enjoyed doing that.
I've started kind of on that eating kick. Well, I've always been a big eater, but cooking wise. So my roommate and I have been planning meals out, testing new meals, and then following through with that. So that's been something to look forward to when I was still at home, kind of the end of day excitement, and then now as well. So planning that and jumping in has been fun. And then professionally, I was struggling at the beginning of all of this. It all just felt like we were just kind of doing what we needed to do to get by. And my style does not fit well with that. And so getting back to, in the Petra world, we use top tasks for the week and daily top priorities for the day. So setting those goals to say, yes, I did this, or no, I did not do this, or something to work towards really helped ground me to get back to quote unquote new normal or the basics.
That's great. Both of those sound like things that you can, to some extent, pull forward once we get back to new normal. The cooking might be a challenge with some of the travel, but good in between.
We'll make it work somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. I've actually, instead of going to the gym, I'm now working out in my garage 4 days a week, something I thought I would never do. and I've actually come to like it a lot. I've started actually working out with my wife in the morning. Another thing that I didn't expect to be doing, and it's been a stretch, but it's been, well, pun intended, but it's been really great. And then there you go, right? And then from a professional standpoint, similar to those top tasks, I've actually started and heard others doing this, like looking at time blocking. So if I've got something where these blocks of time, similar to your point, Taylor, like I'm normally struggling to fit things in with flights and what have you, and going to different locations. And with the extra time, I sit there and go, well, what can I do in this spot? So blocking off, here's an hour I'm going to work on this, even several weeks in advance, can be advantageous, I've found. And I've shared that with others as they're looking to make an impact over these weeks and months that they may have some downtime. To what would you want to make sure you've done 2 months from now with the time that you have, and then blocking off the time each week going forward to ensure that it gets done.
Right.
Do
Do you ever find yourself kind of working through those time blocks and ignoring them, or what is your suggestion on that? Because I am guilty. I will say, oh yeah, I'll do that. And I'll kind of work through it. Don't ever really get back to it.
So I've found that, so yes, the short answer is yes, I have absolutely been guilty of, like, for instance, I had a time block on my calendar today at 1 to do this. There's no way I'm working through that. If I had
Thank
a
you
time
for
block
not
on my
doing
calendar,
that.
right, you're welcome. If I had a time block to read a book or something, I may delay that. And I found that it's the first couple minutes that matter. Once I get started, I never struggle to finish it.
Right.
It's just the first few minutes. And the hack that I've used is, if I find myself struggling to do that, I'll schedule somebody else. Like, I'll say, hey, David, can you and I have a 5-minute Zoom call at 1 o'clock where we aren't even going to talk? We're just going to both work on whatever we're working on. Because that way I have a commitment to do that for somebody else, and I can't push it off. And that helps me to just start right when I need to start. And then, like, literally it's 30 seconds and I go, hey, David, I'm good. Like, I've already started my time block. You go do whatever you need to do. Thanks for helping me out. And then I'm good to go from there. It's a great question.
I like that.
Yeah.
What I've found also is I may not be getting everything done, but I'm getting more done than I would have in the past with this time. So that's the level of satisfaction there. Maybe I'm over aggressive in what I want to accomplish, but if I get 80% done in a given day, I feel pretty good about that. So
Yeah.
probably more than I would have typically done in the busyness of our life before this happened.
It has been nice.
That's a good point.
Ryan, I know you also do your journal, the calendar journal one, pretty well. Did you did you that, and you can maybe let the viewers know what that looks like, but also, did you fall off? Did you pick it back up? Where did that end up?
So I definitely fell off at the beginning. I found that for me, it actually happened, I'll get to it in a minute, recently as well, that I found that for me, when my quote unquote rhythm or normal gets disrupted, I tend to lose some of those habits. So even as I mentioned, working out at home, once the gym that I go to closed, I didn't work out for a week because I went, well, I have my routine that I drive there in the morning, like everything, right? How I put out clothes and shoes the night before, like the whole routine is disrupted. As far as journaling goes, I found that it's really important for me. It's one of the most important things for me to do, to start and end my day that way. So I start writing a note of gratitude, and then I write wins at the end of the day and track my statistics, how many push-ups, sit-ups, things like that I've done throughout the day. I also find that, and this many people would say, well, it's warranted. I was on vacation for the holiday weekend for a few days, and it just went away because my routine's just shot, right? I'm sitting there going, I've got 2 small kids. I've got to get them to bed. It's later. I've got to plan for the activities for the day, and it just completely slips my mind. So I found that there's sort of I don't know, like a rebound period, if you will, of a few days to a week at times for me, going from here's my routine that I've got to, oh my gosh, like everything's changing and different, to get back on track.
Yeah, I kind of got to create a new one at that point, reset.
Yep. That's well said. So a question just came through from Bob in Southern California, and he asked, what is the number one thing that you've learned or heard from somebody out there as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic? Taylor, does something come to mind as far as the top thing that you've learned or that you've heard of a member learning?
Yeah, so I was actually talking to some of the team about this earlier, kind of getting their input as well. And I liked, shout out Krista, provided this example. She said, virtual can be done and by all ages. So we said, oh no, we can't do it. Maybe this generation can, or this demographic can't. And that's not the case. With 1, we were forced into it. And then 2, focus on it. So intentional training, Q&A at the bottom, please chat here, turn video here. We can make it happen. We just need to put focus on it and the attention, we could do it. So super minor example, I thought it was a really cool one.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same way, Taylor, a little bit of a different slant on it, but I've talked to several members and other company leaders, and they're looking back on this last 8 to 10 weeks and they're saying, damn, things still got done. You
Yeah.
know, we were shut down, couldn't have people, couldn't go out and do my sales travels. And I'm looking back and life went on. So the good news, I think we've learned to go through maybe some really bad times and figure out that, hey, it's not nearly as bad as we thought it might have been. And that fear has kind of gone away. I used this the other day talking to one of our members. I said, I feel like through this, we're now going to give our chance to take some risk that we didn't in the past because we were so afraid of the worst case. A lot of us have been through the worst case, so if this is the worst and we survive, why don't we try some other cool, exciting, scary stuff? Because even if it doesn't work out, we know we can get through it. So I think it's really instilled some inspiration out there, and elimination of some fears is what I'm really seeing across the board.
I can totally relate to that, David, personally. I've heard it said to me, I've said it to many, where the fear of the unknown is always worse than the actual event happening, right? And so when we have this example, go, whoa, that's pretty crazy. Like we start to get more confidence in what we can go do, and that's really powerful. The example that came to mind as I'm listening to you guys, it's actually a member that I worked with yesterday. They'd been talking about pivoting their business or kind of adding a secondary business line for 5 years. And as a result of the pandemic, their primary book of business was shut down. And so I'll clarify this. They say they were forced to pivot quickly, and they did so in 10 minutes, right? Or sorry, I said 10 minutes. I said 10 days. I was looking at a question that came in. 10 days, not 10 minutes. But literally, they talked about doing this for 5 years, thinking it would take 6 to 12 months to implement, in normal day-to-day life. And they were able to accomplish this from nothing to literally creating this new product line, selling it online in 10 calendar days. So it wasn't even 10 business days. And the biggest lesson to me was, this all happened 2 months ago at the beginning of this, right? Yesterday, as we were resetting priorities for the next 30 days, I referenced that. I said, guys, look what you were able to do in 10 days. Why haven't you been able to do that same thing again? They said, well, Ryan, we were forced to do that. Yeah. And I said, no, you weren't. Like, that's the lesson to me. We all feel like we were forced to. I said, guys, you could have done 100 other things. You could have shut the business down. You could have sold the business. You could have merged the business. You guys could have just taken a month off. There's a number of things they could have gone and done. What they did is they actually made a decision to go, we're going to do this. We're going to decide this is what we have to do quickly, and we're just going to get it done. And the learning for me was, like, when we do that, it's amazing what we can accomplish. When we make a determination to go, we're going to do this, we're going to devote all our energy to this, like, we can move a damn mountain so quick, because they never would have believed that they'd be able to do it in 10 days. They just said, we have to do this, so we'll do it. Yep. It was really powerful to observe.
You bring up a good point. You had to remind them so soon after that they did that. We're all collectively going to need that reminder. It already kind of feels like kind of a glimpse in the past. It's just, we're moving, we're going always. And so we're going to have to be reminded, we can do this, or we did do that, or here's what we accomplished, and all of those things during this time.
Ryan, that's kind of a plug for coaching. And that's what a coach does, is the team gets so busy and they accomplish so much that we don't really realize. And the coach has to, draw them back and say, look what we've done. Here's where we're going. I've had so many members say, without a coach in this time, I'm not sure how well we would have survived or how we would have thrived through this. And just like a ball team, that goes, it's during the last 30 seconds and they're down by 3 points and they got the ball, they call timeout and the coach settles them down and helps them figure out a play. Well, we've done that a lot. All of us have done some triage on some of our members that we coach. And I think coming out of there, they realize the value of having this outside party that's a part of their team that can objectively look at things while they're in the heat of the battle. So it validates even more so what we do, in my belief in what we do and the value that we add.
We can give them credit, right? I mean, they weren't taking credit for it. And it's like, guys, hold on a second. You've built this muscle. Go use it again. Absolutely. Right? Yeah, that's good. Any questions that you got beforehand, David, as we were prepping for this?
You know, there's one that is come across a couple of times, and when I've done this is, you know, kind of what's the new? What's the new going to look like? What are all the things that are going to be new out there? And I kind of a couple of points that hit me were kind of interesting. I'm the old guy. Nobody knows. I'm the old guy around the office. But
Resident elder.
the gray-haired generation, has learned to act in this virtual world. They have picked up new skills that they never even wanted to try to do because they didn't have to, but they were forced to if they wanted to communicate with their families and their doctors. And so it was actually a word of warning. He says, these very experienced gray-haired generation is going to come at you guys because they now got skill sets that they can compete with you on. So we've got a whole generation that's kind of come back to life here that is now going to exchange with you or deal in the virtual world, which is really the barrier of entry for many of them in the past. So that was a pretty interesting take on what the new world, there may be opportunities for us and others to capitalize on this generation of experience that we've not been able to do before.
DP is going to come in hot.
Coming in hot.
like the chili pepper he's got behind him. Right?
Yeah.
If I can get out, I'm living in Moe's restaurant right now, so if I can get out of that, I can. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's true. I think there's a lot of wealth of knowledge out there that is now going to become available because it's going to be more accessible to us. Really pretty cool.
It's a cool look at it. I also think virtual, it's going to be obviously a hot topic, travel. So our world, we travel a ton. We've opened up to virtual planning. So doing this from Nashville and wherever you are. Then I also think about like the sales teams and all those people that used to travel all of the time. Does that open up a new opportunity for them or change the way they sell?
Yeah, it's a good point. I've thought about in the very short term. I mean, as an example, David, you talk about that, the wise generation. I won't use that 3-letter word you use because that's irrelevant. But my daughter is graduating from preschool on Thursday, and as a result of this, they're offering it on Zoom. And so I was talking with my wife last night and said, "Oh, we should send it to your mom." And she goes, "My mom's never used Zoom in her life. Like, I don't want to troubleshoot that." And as a result of this, the family has been doing a weekly happy hour on Sunday nights, right? So, well, remember, she's on Zoom every Sunday night. She goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. She'll totally get it." So it's something that 3 months ago even would have taken a lot of time to train and learn and multiple rehearsal sessions. Now it's just kind of second nature. And then Taylor, to your point, virtual, like I think there's such an acceptance of this type of interaction now that there wasn't previously. I also think we're going to see people not only working from multiple locations, there's going to be more acceptance again of what's going on in the background, like more so than ever. Like, not that it would happen, but if there were to be an animal walking behind me or my dog starts to bark from the other room, like everybody kind of smiles and goes, "Oh yeah, well, that's what it's like," right? I don't think that's going to necessarily last 5 years from now, but for the next 6, 12, 18 months, I think we're all used to kind of those little disruptions on these calls because quite frankly, they happen. And I think they're wonderful. It shows the human element.
Yeah, it's broken down some of those walls that we naturally put up. I had chatted a huddle one day and then I got off and then someone just FaceTimed me on my cell phone. I was like, "Oh, hello, how are you?" But we would have never have done that before. And I for sure wouldn't have answered. So breaking down those walls definitely caught me off guard, but I loved it.
I think this virtual thing is actually creating also this work-life balance that we always talk about and strive for. I've talked to several people who, especially in Northeast up in New York, they've found 3 or 4 hours of their day because they're not commuting that they never had before, that they can spend with home or in health or whatever. So I think there's going to be, you never get that complete balance, but there's going to be an opportunity now because employers are now realizing things can get done when people aren't in the office, is allowing more of this life to kind of creep into the schedule than they had before. Which is a good thing, obviously, good for mental health and whatever. But and I think it's even more efficient, guys. I mean, to get on to commute for an hour to get into work, and it takes you another hour to settle down. And then by the time it's 3 hours later, it's time to get back on the commute and go home. It's just I think we're much more efficient. I'm finding, or I'm seeing that actually they're accomplishing a lot more in their position than they were before going into a physical office. So I think there's gonna be a whole change in the way we think about where you work, how you work, and what the expectation is. You know, you don't have to put in those 24-hour days anymore. Maybe it's just 12, you know, it's that kind of thing. So
What I have found with that, though, kind of on the opposite, is I had a really hard time turning it off.
Yeah.
So in the office, I have to leave at whatever time to go wherever. Therefore, I'm going to crank it out all day long to hit that. And then I'm going to leave, and I can turn my computer back on absolutely later and kind of that quick email scan. But I was struggling walking away from it.
Sure.
Now, I think over time you figure out your routines, but that was one of my personal challenges. I just was sitting there, no real end in sight, and kind of making it happen. Not so that's everybody's case, but I personally was struggling with that.
Yeah.
That's so real. I mean, I remember the first time I started working from home. It's been several years now, but I struggle with that. And I've taught myself that even something as simple as changing clothes at the end of the day is just a delineation to go, okay, now, like, it's to your point, Shelley, it's not that you can't, I mean, it's not like you don't have a laptop and couldn't send emails from home as you go home. It's just the fact of you got in your car and drove to a different location. When I lived in California, I actually built an office that was still part of the same structure of my home, but I had to walk outside down an exterior flight of stairs and back inside to the office, which that was my drive. And it was amazing, right? It was all of 25 feet away. It took me less than a minute to do. And it created that separation between, okay, I'm working here and I'm not working here, which I do think we'll see things like that, where we'll see, you know, more offices set up in homes, or a small second, you know, loft over a garage, or whatever it may be, as things progress.
I had a friend say, she goes, I thought about just getting in my car, driving around the block, listening to my morning show, and then just parking it again and going back upstairs.
I think there's even a commercial where the lady leaves the house and goes and gets the mail and gets the coffee, and her husband's in the kitchen when she leaves, and she comes back, you know, 30 minutes later, and she commuted to her office. Now she's back home to work in her office.
Traffic was the worst today.
We have to build some routines like that to make that separation.
On the other hand, so at Petra, we all went home, obviously. We're coming back, and we have enough monitors right now to allow the team to keep their monitor we supplied them at home for a work from home period of time, to keep that. So they'll have one at the office here, and then when they do need to work from home, allowing them the resources to still be their best self.
Yeah, that's another thing I'm seeing. That may become a part of hiring packages now. Is, you know, home an allotment to cover some of your home office expenses. You know, a better computer, high-speed access to the internet, that kind of thing. Maybe a part of the perk package that we now offer employees that typically wasn't a part of that.
It could even be a point of negotiation, right, David? And even just the ability of that, can I work from home 2 days a week?
Yeah.
As you were mentioning, I work with a local company here in Nashville, and they have several employees that do have a 60 to 90 minute commute each way. And they're sitting there going, look, we work, it's an IT consulting firm, right? Like, we predominantly work remotely from our computer in the office, supporting other people. So if we could do that at home, you know, I'll even give you an extra hour of work if I'm a salaried employee, and I'll get an extra hour back in my life if you let me work from home. So it's an interesting dynamic to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, it's gotten rid of the excuse of the employer by saying that won't work, because now we've seen it work. So no longer can you say you can't do that at home. Yeah, well, I can, because I was forced to do it, and things got done. So I think it'll be more acceptable in the culture going forward.
Yep. I just saw a question come in from Nick, and he asked, what have we seen in the companies we coach that they've built before COVID? What rhythms or habits or best practices that they're really leveraging and finding value in now that there's this current dynamic? Does something come to mind for you guys with a company, a member company that you work with?
Taylor?
I've had a few that said, we've always been doing daily huddle, but thank the Lord we were doing daily huddle. Sometimes it could be a pain point. Like, why do we do this every day? 15 minutes, I could be fill in the blank. When really that was a connecting point that was already established, and we were really able to lay into that. I've heard that multiple times, and from some of my teams that don't love it. They said, oh, thank goodness, we couldn't be where we are today without it. So I think those meeting rhythms, it's huge.
Yeah, and it's good that they've had it, because it would be really difficult, I think, not impossible, but harder to spin it up had it not been in place already, right?
I think that's it. I mean, obviously what we preach based on the Rockefeller habits, and habits is exactly what goes into all the companies that we work with. And in addition to communication rhythms, they got the habit of different planning cycles, the habit of having a written strategic plan that's very detailed that they can go to. I know several of my members, when this crisis hit, that's the first thing they did. Pull out the old plan and say, how are we impacted here? What do we need to tweak? Can things go on as we say? So they had a playbook to go to, basically, that if you did not, man, you're scrambling around while the missiles are being fired at you, trying to figure out your path. So nothing more comforting than to have something to go to that you're used to using. I think that's one of the big things. It was a comfort level, just like when you're in battle. The old muscle memory kicks in, and you don't have to go ask questions. What do I do here? Well, you do what you've been trained to do. Well, all of our members, and Petra as well, we've all been trained in these routines, and that was very comforting. Even when the world was falling apart, it's very comforting to have those routines to go to and rely on, and kind of settle us down, allow us to think more clearly. So all those benefits I'm seeing across the board with everybody that we work with, is the benefit that's been to them to have these processes in place.
Something to fall back on.
Yeah.
What about you,
Without
Ryan?
question.
Anything come to mind?
Yeah, so there's actually, you hit on it already, Taylor. The slight difference is sort of an iteration of a daily huddle. Is a couple companies that I work with, they've created a every other day COVID huddle, right? And so what they've done is they've sat there and gone, okay, we know if something comes up, we can put it in the proverbial parking lot, and tomorrow at 9 a.m., the COVID task force is going to meet for 30 minutes. It's not necessarily like a huddle. It's almost more of like a weekly where they're going to go through and solve things. But just the fact that they went, hey, we know what it's like to come with an agenda and a script and go through that and solve it. So that muscle being used in that sort of slightly different way, given the current times, has been great. The other one that I've heard is the ability to create a set period of time, set a priority, and put a plan in place. And I know that sounds so cliche, right? I mean, that sounds so like, well, yeah, I mean, everybody kind of needs to have some idea of where they're going and put a plan in place to get there. But David, you hit it, right? Once you, in the heat of battle, you sort of fall back on what you know. And if we don't know how to do that, it's really hard to build that skill. Right. So for those companies that have built that over the past months and years, they've never had to do it for this reason, right? They've done it to grow. And we've talked a lot about shifting our business from, vitamins to medicine, right? Like we've been that, how do we make sure you're healthy as you grow, to how do we solve this problem right now?
Right now, yeah.
Exactly. And it's the same rhythm, it's a different reason, which has been great, right? I've had companies go, gosh, we don't know how we would make this pivot, but now that we just set a priority and it gets done. Yeah, we sit there, set a priority, go through, build a plan, and it gets done.
We help companies put in a framework that you can plug and play things as you need to, depending on what's going on in the marketplace, but still the same framework. And to me, that's just very comforting as well, to know that we as Petra do that as well. We were able to pivot pretty quick and move into these webinars and workshops, overnight, virtually overnight.
Virtually.
We've tested, we know, and we live the same thing. So that this framework is just so compelling to have in place, to know that you can then survive and repivot from that.
Ryan, your kind of COVID huddle reminded me, Petra did it, and I've had a few teams do it as well, set critical numbers around COVID items. So a dashboard or however you want to track it. What is it that COVID is directly impacting that we can react to? So this number hits the green or hits the red, we're good, or we need to change something. Setting those specifically based on the circumstances has also been beneficial.
Yep, we did that yesterday with a company Catherine and I were working with, because of being remote, and they said we need to actually make sure that we're proactively reaching out to our broader client base, right? And so they set a critical number of how many people they will actually do an account review over the next 30 days.
I like that.
And they sat there and went, they need to do them on a quarterly basis. So they took a third of their top tier clients. So we're going to make sure that we have this many, I think it was 12, done over the next 30 days. And then they need to have the other 25 scheduled, which is another critical number, the 60 days after, right? And it's just line of sight to that to go, well, we got to make sure that gets done. We got to make sure that gets done. It's that habit that they've built in place.
Yeah.
It's actually created too a lot of efficiency in organizations because they had to choose the most important things to work on and focus on. And they're finding out that a lot of the stuff they do every day isn't necessary or isn't necessary on the rhythm that they do it. So, I think all companies will gain some efficiencies through this process. The bad side of this is I think there's going to be less need for certain types of employees and levels of management because they've figured out it works okay without that, or maybe even more efficiently. So instead of having 3 layers of management where to get to the CEO or CEO get to somebody down in another level, they've got to go through 3 people. Well, now they go directly because it's so much easier and everybody can be on the same call. So I think you're going to see leaner organizations, more efficient organizations, hopefully then more successful organizations because of that. So I guess the advice is make sure you're one of those essential people, that you have the skill sets and you're doing what's necessary and it's essential to the company.
Yeah, that term essential person has a totally different meaning now with all of the requirements to be working, right?
Right.
Similarly, you said lean, and I always think about like the efficiency of getting something done. I think what we've seen through this pandemic is lean in the decision making, to not go in 15 different directions and go, this is the one thing we're going to go do, because that's how we've determined that maybe these additional, to your point, David, these additional layers of management aren't as needed because we're not going in 6 different directions. We can go in the 1 or maybe 2 that are most crucial. That's good.
The big word of advice in that area is we really had to encourage everybody because everybody's waiting to see when's this thing going to end, when are they going to open up, and we help them pick a target or a start point or something and begin to move in that direction, because we know within 24 hours it's going to change anyway because things are changing so rapidly. So it's better to move towards something than to sit still and wait for the perfect moment, which never arrives. So we really had to kind of kick some people out of the house, say, get busy, which has been, again, that's a part of coaching, is for us to help them get motivated to do some things. But I guess the thing out of that is, get moving. It's not the time to wait anymore. It's time to move. It's going to change. It changes every day and dramatically, but just get moving in some direction. So.
A little bit of a pivot on that thought. It reminded me when you were saying that how many times do we say who, what, when? Like a who, what, when mindset. We always collectively as the world will say, hey, Ryan, I need this. And when I think I need it, my expectation, if I don't make it clear, is tomorrow. Ryan thinks next week's totally fine. We're always missing that win. So I think by setting those 30-day goals, that's the by win. Let's just put something by win and start tracking towards it to create the actions.
Exactly.
That's great. Yeah, David, to your point of taking action, I forget who said it originally, but one of my favorite phrases is it's impossible to steer a parked car.
Yeah, exactly.
So even if we're going in the wrong direction, we can actually turn around and go in the right direction if we're moving down the road, right?
Yeah.
That's good. David, a question came in around, I know you're really good at these around finances. I'm just wondering, what are you seeing in terms of loan forgiveness? Any latest up-to-dates? They're saying, what are the latest up-to-dates that you're hearing about, the PPP loan forgiveness? Anything changed in the past week that they need to know about?
Do I look like an accountant?
Yeah, why did you not ask me, Ryan?
Yeah, why ask you?
Well, I know it wasn't part of his intro, but David does have a little bit of a background in accounting and finance. And I think in looking at your calendar for this today, I think you may have blocked off all day tomorrow to do tax. Did I see that? Yeah. And that I think you color coded it green because it's your highlight of the month. Is that right? That you get to go to your
word of warning. If you become a CPA in your life, everybody in your family and their extended family thinks you should do their taxes for free.
Right.
So
right.
Anyway, that's what that was for. But no, PPP. A couple of relevant things. Most of you on the call probably have obviously heard about it and probably participated in the PPP funds, but. Just recently, yesterday, I read an article that talked about where we stand with the resources. It's interesting. Since the middle of May to the current time, there's been more money go back into the fund than has been taken out in loans because all these companies giving their money back after those threats from Mnuchin about, we're going to audit everybody over 2 million. We're going to come after you if you didn't deserve it, whatever. So they actually had more money flow back into the fund than was actually being loaned out the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that being said, they say there's about $150 billion still left to be loaned out under the PPP funds. So if you're out there and you haven't applied, it's still not too late to do that. And we'd advise you to take advantage of that. It is a great program. If you use it for the right resources, it will help you get to the other side of something. I don't know if it'll be enough in the long run, depending on how long this goes, but it is a great aid that, if you're eligible, you should take advantage of, and it's not too late. The other thing that we're hearing, and we're pretty confident this is going to happen, Congress on both sides, the House and the Senate, are speaking positive about extending the 8-week period to some other longer periods, 16 weeks, maybe 24 weeks, which really help a lot of what we have a lot of companies that we work with in the hospitality industry who've been basically totally shut down. And they can't even, a lot of them can't even get back yet, or just beginning to get back. They obviously won't be at full speed for quite some time. So this would help them to use the money over a longer period of time. Unfortunately, how slow Congress acts. This may not happen quickly. So if you're 6 weeks into your 8 weeks, it may not help you at all. So the good news is we think in all likelihood this time frame will be extended. The bad news is we don't know when that's going to happen. And they're also talking about maybe softening some of the allocation of resources. You had to use 75% per payroll, and they're allowing maybe some of that to happen. But we got to work with what we got. So now we got 8 weeks. And we've got to work on the forgiveness piece and make sure that we do that right. And a couple of things about that. There is the formal application for forgiveness that the banks will be using is now available. You can get it on the U.S. Treasury website. If you have not looked at that and you've received PP funds, I would advise you to go download that and get familiar with it. It's about 11 pages. I've got one. I kind of sleep with it. I got one right here. So it's 11 pages. There's about 3 worksheets you got to work through to get to it, to get your end result. And I advise you to do that now. Even if you got 7 or 8 weeks left, project forward what you think it's going to look like, because within the guidance, there's some ability to manage some of those costs so you can raise your likelihood of the most forgiveness. So do that now. Don't wait till the 7th day on the 7th week to say, let me see how I stand. That's not good. Now you can do that. So that's out there, and that's what the banks will be using to review and approve your forgiveness when they recommend that to the SBA.
DP or David did a webinar on this yesterday. I just popped that into the chat for all of you guys. There's a recap and a video for all of his knowledge. Hitting send again. He does, I guess they're bi-weekly workshops at this point on government assisting. So as these things change, as we know, get in one of those workshops and you can click that link, takes you right to it, and you can get some one-on-one DP time for all that goodness.
We've got one next Wednesday, and we'll do a little more interactivity. We'll kind of walk you through the application, and we got a little spreadsheet that will help you with that. And we hope to do some one-on-one coaching during that workshop, or glad to after the fact as well. So a good use of your time, and we'll get you a long way, I guess, in understanding the process. You're still going to probably need to work with your professionals, but this will give you the knowledge you need to know to kind of better manage that process going forward.
Thank you, David. I was listening to that, and 2 thoughts came to mind. Just want to make sure the audience picked up on them. One is, for those that are thinking like, oh, I've already missed this boat, right? Because there was so much hype around the first tranche of the PPP funding that, oh, it's out, right? I think there's several people that thought the second is probably going to go through the same iteration and be gone in a week or 2, and that's not the case. Right. So there's still funds out there. And then, you helped me work with a friend that's an independent contractor that thought her accountant told her that she couldn't qualify. And while it wasn't as much money as some of these larger firms are getting, she still qualified for a few $1,000s, which was helpful. And then, you said something that I thought was great. You said, don't wait until the end of that 8 weeks to go through and structure this. It's not that you don't necessarily wait to fill out the application, because there's a deadline far after that to
Yeah.
fill out the application for forgiveness.
Yeah.
What I heard you say is you got to make sure that you look at that as quickly as possible so that you can structure the 8 weeks properly,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to fill out application on week 10 to make sure you get it in far in advance of the deadline, well, that ship sailed. Like you can't, you're just going to reporting and you can't change anything from that
Yeah.
perspective.
I'll give you a little teaser out here. I won't give you the details, but the way the guidelines were written, that just came out on Friday, actually, there is some ability within the guidelines, unless they come back and change some of the wording, which they do. They issue these interim final guidelines like every week. So, but as it stands now, there's ability to even claim more than a pure 8 weeks of payroll and non-payroll cost, depending on when you pay those things during that time period. So it can be a little more outside just a pure 8 weeks of these expenses within the legality of the guidelines as they're stated now. So throw a little teaser out there. If you're not, that maybe drive you to maybe come to our workshop or at least look into it. I think you should, because there are some things you can do to improve your position.
That's great. Yeah, and that's definitely top of mind for all of us right now. Taylor, anything that you got in terms of questions in advance as you were reaching out to people? Yep.
I got a question around, are you seeing, let me read it actually. So additional benefits, if any, are you hearing companies are providing to teams due to COVID? I have an example that I have heard, kind of benefits. I'll let you guys jump in. So I say kind of benefits loosely. So we have done the transition with some of my teams of celebrating anniversaries more than, let's say, a birthday or fill in the blank. So we always celebrate that first day. So best first day ever. Let's celebrate those anniversaries. One, they're staying. Two, you're keeping them because you have the resources to fill in the blank. So I like that shift. Let's focus on the retention.
Yeah.
That's great. David, you got anything there?
Yeah, a couple of things that I have seen. Really, this is the interesting one, because I've always been intrigued by this, is the old unlimited vacation policy. And I think this kind of goes back to, we've proven that people really will work when they're at home. And maybe if they're,
can't even stop working, right? Which is at home.
if they're good at holding you accountable to what you're responsible for, which is obviously a part of what we help companies do, is build in accountability. You know, building in, if they're the right player on the team, giving them that option to have at least a little more vacation, maybe not unlimited, but more free time at their option, as long as they're doing what the expectation is in their position. So I've heard that more than once. The companies are thinking about improving that free time policy, whether it's vacation or time off or whatever, which again, I think is very good in that work-life balance. And it's a respect thing, guys. You know, it shows respect for that employee if we're able to offer those things. And it only makes them more engaged and more appreciative and they actually will do more for you than they may have done in the past just because of that. So that's one of the really intriguing things I'm seeing. And I'm heard it more than once from companies. And we're gonna make some changes here.
I also think on that really fast, encouraging them to take the time, even if we can't travel yet. So you can go to a few places, maybe you don't feel comfortable traveling yet as an employee, but still as a employer, encouraging them to take the time off. If you sit at home and do nothing, that's awesome. I need you to step away from this for a second. Come back refreshed, do what you need to do, enjoy that family time, and just need you to take that time away.
It's similar to making sure people take the time when needed. Well, it's not as positive as vacation, and I got to give the disclaimer that I am not an HR attorney or legal expert in that regard. I do work with a company that has had 2 people that have gotten COVID-19, and for those individuals, the employer said, we're not going to dock any of your sick pay as a result of you getting this disease. I've also heard them amend their policy to say that if an immediate family member were to get that disease and require care from an employee, that they would offer, they'd basically pay that employee for the time out of sick pay without docking their sick pay, right? And now I realize there's tons of companies out there that are struggling from a cash standpoint right now. So you may not have the means to do that. To the same extent, they said that it provided their 2 employees with a tremendous amount of relief, because they're sitting here going, like, you know, we want to make sure we have a job. We know the job market can be a little tough right now. We want to help out. And they said, no, your way you help out is you go take care of yourself.
Yep.
Don't worry about anything else. You get healthy. And then once you can come back, then we'll deal with that. Right. But I think that's important for us to be thinking about in advance, to tell people what's our position on that. Do they have to use their sick or vacation pay, or is that something that we're going to cover for them?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all going to benefit, because companies are now going to be healthier places to work. I mean, they're going to be forced, because now you have a standard out there that's being established. They're going to be forced, you know, to do the cleanings and to have the place, a safe place to be. And I've been around longer than you, but I've been in some businesses where I had to go take a shower when I got out of there. You know, it just didn't seem like a very sanitary place. So I think we're all going to be forced, because there now is a comparison out there, and we can't go by that old standard. I don't put any money back into the safe work environment. Well, yeah, now you're going to have to, and that's because that's the expectation these days.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I was actually just this morning talking with Dwayne from Louisiana, and we were talking about like the focus on sort of the defense part of this, right? So as we're talking about planning, and we look at, you know, he was asking, how do we even plan for this unknown, right? So like how do we accomplish like making sure that we're playing defense to the extent we need to, and balancing that with how do we go play offense as well with these opportunities that are out there? Taylor, do you have any thoughts on that, of just from your experience of working with teams over these past several weeks?
Admittedly, nothing comes to mind immediately.
It's a fair answer. David, you can jump in and rescue, or you can just let her sit there and ponder it.
Well,
Why didn't shoot me that lifeline, DP?
well, I mean, I just think again, you've got to approach everything with a calm. And I think giving the framework, we go back to this frame, really, this is really it. If we go back to the framework that we help companies put in and we practice ourselves, you're able to draw on things that you couldn't do if you were having to create and evaluate in under fire, I guess is what I'm saying. So you can actually do both at once. You know, I'm not a fan of the multitasking stuff, but you really can do both. You can both be defensive and offensive, because you've got a framework that allows you to do both at the same time. And I think, again, logical, calm heads prevail because you've got these processes and systems and habits in place. So I think you can play both sides in parallel track if you have to.
You caught me in I cannot multitask. I was reading a question that was coming through when you asked me that question. I just think you pick a date, you plan for it, and you go. The question that came through, do you have any input, Ryan, on that?
Well, no, I similar to that. And I would just say that I think it's the act of planning that is really important. Yeah. Just the fact of going through and creating a plan is as important as anything. And then my longtime attorney, who's become a friend, has said the reason that you have a plan is so that you know what you're changing from. So even if we plan for the completely wrong outcome, at least we're all on the same page that we're going this direction, and we all know what we're changing from. So similar to your point, Taylor, pick a date and plan would be a great way to do it. Yeah. What was that question?
Question came through and says, what if your employees don't want to return to work? Then what happens? Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Well, Taylor, you came back, right? Even though you didn't want, no, just kidding.
No, I was running back. No, so I was talking to a team this morning actually about this. I was doing a call with her. I noticed the bright green wall behind her. She was back in her office, not her home office, which was a fabulous fireplace the past 8 weeks prior to. And I said, hey, what is y'all's stance on this? Are you going back? Are you not going back? And she said, we put it in two different buckets. Those that have health problems we talked to, and those that were in kind of a level of convenience in one way or the other, two different buckets. Health, we addressed one way. Convenience, we talked to. Getting down to the why. Why do you not want to come back? What does that look like? Are you afraid of getting sick? Is it more convenience? Really getting to the root of the cause and not just generalities or assuming things. I liked that stance.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the lawyers are going to get involved in this, and there's going to be some legal issues that come out of us as an employer asking our employees to come back when they don't really want to come back. And I'm seeing both sides. If you have a pre-existing condition that makes you susceptible to risk, as an employer, you're going to have to make what they're calling now is called reasonable accommodation of those things, whatever that looks like, whether it's work at home or it's a separate office, it's whatever PPE, protective equipment, whatever it is. If you don't have those things, it's just like Taylor said, you're not going, as long as the employer is following some protocol, you're not going to have that option to say, I don't want to come in. And then that's where the fight begins. And unfortunately, there's going to be some fights over that. I'm already seeing that. There's always going to be some fights over that. And part of the PPE thing, going back to that, is they want you to be employed. So if you refuse to come back to work, I've got to turn you into the state unemployment office and say they refuse to come back to work. So there's all kinds of those things starting to pop up out of this. And so I think hopefully employers will be reasonably accommodating to everybody, but I think at the end of the day, as long as they make some effort, you're going to have to come back or risk losing your job.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's going to be tough, and the size of the company is going to matter tremendously as well, right? If you're a company with, a smaller shop with say 5, 10, even under 50 employees, I think there's the ability to have those kind of one-off conversations. If you're a company of 1,000 employees, that's just not sustainable. You've got to create a policy, and it's unfortunate, but that's what a company like that has to do from an efficiency standpoint. So I think the size of the company is going to matter a lot.
Yeah.
I also think that it's an important discussion to have with the leadership team initially, because it's going to be impossible to enforce that everybody has to come back to the office. If one of the senior leaders, well, it's not impossible, it's going to be more trouble than it's worth. One of the senior leaders goes, I don't feel comfortable doing this, right? So you got to get alignment from senior leadership to start, and then determine what the plan is there. In the topic of senior leadership, there was actually a funny email that came through earlier talking about, how do disc profiles or communication styles, how do they come to light through this pandemic? And Taylor, I know you have more experience than David or myself do. So I don't know if you blocked off a day tomorrow to do disc profiles for your friends and family like David does for taxes. I'm not sure. But,
I sleep with disc profiles every night.
Right, exactly. I'm just curious what you've seen and what you're experiencing out there through this pandemic around disc.
How often do we go into a company and their number one challenge is communication? If only he communicated like this or she communicated like this, we would have no problems. Wouldn't that be nice? So I actually pulled something, so I saw that same email, Ryan, around tendencies under stress with the different DISC communication styles. So at Petro, we love DISC. It's the workplace communication that we all do. We practice it with our teams, fill in the blank. 4 different styles: dominant, influencing, steady, and conscientious. So DIS and C. I'm going to read you these really quick. I think they're really cool. Well, and insightful. So the D, dominant DISC style. So those drivers, leaders, typically in the organization, under stress can be demanding, nervy, aggressive, or egotistical. So that's what they're going to typically resort towards. I, the influencers in our world, self-promoting, overly optimistic, gabby, and unrealistic. So they might fall towards that. S, my fellow S's in the world, until I say this, you're like, Taylor, don't brag about that. Non-demonstrative, hesitant, and inflexible. So I will noted. And then C's tend to fall when stressed to be pessimistic, picky, fussy, or overall critical. So this is a very high stress time. And in our DISC communication styles, we're going to fall towards that. It's what we know to be true. That's how we're going to react. And as leaders, we should at least consider that. Okay, she's not being like this, or he's not being like this because he wants to be a jerk. He is just being pessimistic and needs to be proven wrong or different, or he's just under stress in having those conversations.
Yeah, that's important. It's great to know, especially if you can have those conversations proactively and then be on the lookout for them. Because ultimately, that's how somebody's going to communicate and how they're going to perceive a situation. I think when somebody's pessimistic, it doesn't mean that they literally think the whole entire world's going to end and there's no way to go but down, right?
Right.
What it does mean is that that's what they're going to see at first. And so if not only they're aware of it, their team's aware of it, they can address that and ultimately move in the direction they want to be going into.
I've run a few, what we call them comparison reports. So I've had a few team members in my member world say, I just am really struggling with so-and-so. And it's heightened even more during this time. Well, probably because they're falling underneath their tendencies of stress and running those reports. So I work this way with Ryan. Ryan works this way with me. Really helps that communication channel and break down those barriers. I've really enjoyed that, looking at that.
Well, that's good. It takes work. I mean, you've got to stay on top of these things. I mean, that's kind of a best practice, I guess, for all of our leaders out there, is to review these things on a periodic basis now, especially during this time, especially when people are starting to come back into the workplace. And you've got to be committed to the process. But to me, that awareness just changes everything, because I immediately have a different perspective on things when I'm aware of these different styles that they have. Hopefully I'll change my behavior because of that, but the awareness definitely changes my attitude as far as the way I communicate with others.
And we need the reminders. Like we said a minute ago with Ryan, that one company was able to do so much in 10 days and they already forgot about it.
Yeah.
I just read you those things, and tomorrow you might need to hear it again if you're having trouble with somebody. So the reminders, keeping it top of mind.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, that's good. Very cool. Well, we are winding down to the back to the top of the hour here. I'm curious, guys, if there's something that has just stood out that you're most grateful for that you've seen, just that you've experienced, or that you've seen a company experience. Just something that's like, oh, that was a really neat moment that I could experience that from a gratitude perspective. And it could literally be outside of work too. I just like to end on a positive note, as we've got all this pandemic and crisis going on. What is it that we're grateful for? What comes to mind?
I'll jump in really quick. I had a company, it's a hospitality company out in California, and they are just good to the core. All kinds of people, run a bunch of different bars and venues. And during this time, they still felt it appropriate, and I agree, to support them to roll out a new core purpose. So they call it just their purpose. And this is still what roots us as a company. We're not all working right now. The bars are not open. We cannot do what we do. We cannot love those people that come in. But our purpose is still the same, and we are going to love in that way. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think along those same lines, you've really seen companies that believe their core purpose shine in this time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the core purpose required them to make some very hard decisions at times, paying for people in spite of them not being on, not coming to work or whatever it is, feeding families.
Yeah.
The power of the core purpose really, really came through in this challenged time, which is exactly what it should. It should never waver. And it was really demonstrated by a number of companies that we work with in big ways.
I had a different one, Taylor, and what you just shared actually got me to come up with something even better. So a company we work with, their purpose is around giving back. And so their BHAG ties into that, and they have a goal, big, hairy, audacious goal in 2035 to donate $1 million in that year and 10,000 hours of service, right? So they're gonna have to be a much bigger company in order to accomplish both. From the dollar figure is not impossible, but gonna be difficult. They're gonna have to quadruple the size of their team. Otherwise, the whole company's gonna take a month off to facilitate.
And just volunteer.
And to play into that is they also have a very unique policy where they'll not only match, they'll double an employee's donation each year up to $500 per employee. So if an employee donates $500 to a cause, they'll donate 1,000 additional in their name. And so they realized that one of the charities that's been significantly impacted because of this is the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So there's a number of kids that their wishes are being left, not granted. And so they did, through their community, they raised over $3,000 to sponsor a couple wishes for kids in the greater Nashville area. It was really neat, right? And I got to participate, and it was neat for me to be able to donate and help. And then it was really cool because they did their 2 times match to anybody in the community, right? So when I donate $100, they donated 200 to 2x that for me. It was really just a great moment to be a part of. That was cool. Thanks for triggering that in me. I totally forgot, Taylor.
Oh, of course. That's a great reminder. Again,
Yep.
stick with what you know is true. and basis the purpose of each of us in our companies. I like it.
Great. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap up. A couple quick reminders as we talked earlier about going virtual. At PetraCoach, we have done a lot more virtually now than we ever have before. Taylor mentioned, and so did David, that next Wednesday at the same exact slot, so next Wednesday at 1 o'clock Central, David is hosting a workshop. It's a workshop at 1. Is that correct, David, next Wednesday? It's a workshop on the government financing programs that are out there. So, and you mentioned it's interactive, so people can come and bring their questions. And
we're working on them bringing some information that they can work with during the session on their company. So yes.
Great. And then we're also doing a number of getting back on track, as we're calling it, for your third quarter and planning workshops. So we have one tomorrow with Marshall, let me see here, at 1 o'clock Central. And then our next one is next Tuesday at 9 o'clock Central with Eric. So Taylor just put in the chat here, it's petracoach.com/COVID-19/$workshops, or webinars rather. And then there's webinars as well that we've got coming up. So go ahead and look at those workshops and webinars that we are offering. Bring your team to the workshops to get your Q3 plan in place. It's value like we've never provided before, and people are absolutely raving about getting the clarity that we've talked about of what they need to go do over the next 90 days in their business.
Again, pick a date, make a plan, make it happen.
There it is.
When is your cooking class? I didn't see it.
Facebook Live at 5 p.m. tonight.
Right.
Bring your own wine glass.
And you're making Moe's chicken, right? In honor of David's background.
I'll bring the wine.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all very much for hanging with us for an hour on this Coach's Corner, and we will see you all shortly at one of our workshops or webinars. See you guys.
Thanks.